Let's get to our guest host for the next 2 hours. Jim Rogers, the adventure capitalist, is back with us, chairman at Rogers Holdings. Also with us this hour is Rachel Ziemba, senior analyst at RGE Monitor, live out of New York. Rachel, good evening to you. We'll get to you in just a bit. Mr. Rogers, good to see you again.
Delighted.
Good morning.
Delighted. 60
years now since the founding of the People's Republic. We know, just to set the record straight again, just to remind viewers, you are a huge China bull, even over the next 60 years?
Oh, absolutely. You know, China has had recurring periods of greatness throughout its history. It's also had recurring periods of disaster. In fact, they were in decline for 300 years until 1979. Deng Xiaoping said, we got to change, we got to try something new. It's been onward and upward ever since, and as far as I can see, they've got another century or two ahead of them. That's going to be great.
Broadly speaking, Jim, what do you think is on China's to-do list over the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years, economically?
Sure, you know I'm not smart enough to know that, but I do expect I'd rather be in China than I had in the rest of the world. China saved up huge reserves for a rainy day. Now it's raining, and they're spending those reserves. You contrast that with the UK or the US, for instance, which has no reserves, has nothing but huge debts, and they're borrowing or printing or taxing to spend their money. So I'd rather be in the East than in the West.
That money is going to be continue to be deployed in commodities and natural resources, is it?
It's going to be continued to be deployed in lots of things. It's going to be deployed into television sets and cars and motor scooters and bridges and schools. It's going to be deployed into everything. They've got the money, the West doesn't. The creditor nations in the world now, three, are all in the U.S. China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong. This is where the money is now.
Indeed. Man's coming on us.
Rachel, if it's possible, yeah, absolutely. Rachel, if it's possible, are you as bullish as Jim Rogers on China?
Well, not quite as much, and I would say I'm probably almost as bullish in the next 60 years, but I'm probably a little more wary over the next couple of years.
All right,
because,
why?
Well, I do see. Why? Because I think we have to remember that China is still reliant on both external capital, but especially on homes for its exports. And one of the things I think we see out of the fiscal stimulus is that Chinese government was very effective at returning to growth, but as long as the U.S. and Europe and the countries that absorb China's exports are only sluggishly returning to growth, then China's growth is going to be constrained. I also see a certain number of risks or challenges that come from the stimulus itself. We've seen over the last couple of weeks more and more worries from Chinese officials about overcapacities that have been built up or have been exacerbated over the last year. And so I think this is a time for policymakers around the world where they have to be very careful not to make missteps.
Indeed.
And China's leaders are concerned about that.
Okay.
And but this is a difficult year.
All right, we'll talk about potential leadership changes going forward and what they might mean for policy coming up in just a bit. Rachel Ziemba from RGE Monitor stays with us, as does Jim Rogers. Questions for either or both of them, email us at squawk@cnbcasia.com.